Hey everyone, Sam here. Thanks for joining me. I hope you're having a beautiful day wherever you are in the world. In this video, I'm going to show you a couple of landscape studies that I did that I painted using gouache. Now, I've not used gouache much at all. In fact, the most gouache painting I've done has been this week as I was properly trying out this medium. But recently I've been seeing lots of paintings popping up on my Instagram feed from other landscape artists that have been using gouache as a painting medium, and to be honest, I thought some of them were oil paintings. I mean, the results were really good. So this is something that I wanted to try and see if it's something I can incorporate into my design process. Now, I am mainly an oil painter and that's my favourite medium to paint with, but in the design process of my paintings I like to do pencil sketches. I've even been using Procreate and doing digital sketches as well, and now I think I could definitely do some gouache studies or paintings as well as part of my design process. So I think this is a really awesome medium to use, and in this video I'm just going to show you a couple of these landscapes that I've done this week. Now if this is something you like, I can make more videos on this. I am pretty inexperienced at using gouache, but I'm already seeing that it's quite an easy medium to use. Now just before I start the video, I'd like to tell you quickly about my Patreon channel. Each month I upload a painting tutorial video, full length one, where I show you how to paint an artwork from start to finish. Also extended time-lapse videos, reference photos and printable lesson notes, as well as other bonus content, all for just $5 a month, and I've put the link in the description box below. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. In the meantime, let's get into the video and I hope you enjoy it. So this is the reference photo that I used to paint this first painting that I'm going to show you in a moment. And this area is near a place called Glenorchy, which is in southern New Zealand. It's a really beautiful spot. I'm painting on watercolour paper and it's an A5 size, and what I've done here is I've put masking tape around the edges so that it has a border. Now, just like with my oil paintings, when I'm approaching a landscape I did the same here with this gouache paint, starting off with the dark values and shadows first and then painting the lighter layers afterwards. So I'm starting off with the mountain in the background, and this is a mix of ultramarine blue with some burnt sienna, some titanium white and a little crimson as well. So let's just talk a bit about this gouache paint, because I'm completely new to using it. In fact, I've only done a handful of paintings, all of which I pretty much did this week. So gouache, it's kind of like a sort of opaque watercolour, and I've been seeing some gouache paintings popping up on my Instagram feed, particularly from artists like Scott Christensen, and I couldn't tell or not whether they were oil paintings or gouache paintings. The effect is really cool and it actually lends itself to that kind of loose painterly style. So I wanted to give this a try because I thought this could be good for using for my design process with my paintings. I could make some quick colour studies with these. Also, I just really like the look that gouache gives. It's also clean as well. The cleanup's really easy because it's just essentially kind of watercolour, but also it's opaque, so you can add thicker layers as well as it dries. Now what I'm doing here is I'm adding my dark values first, so the values are getting darker as we come into the foreground. This is because we'll find our darkest darks in the foreground as well as our lightest lights. Yet as landforms recede, darks are not as dark and lights are not as light, and that's because the value scale narrows, and value is how light or dark a subject is. So I've got these background mountains in, and now I'm painting the sky, and this is a mix of ultramarine blue with titanium white and a little viridian. Now the gouache colours I'm using, I actually got a set of them from an art store in Australia a couple of years ago because I wanted to try this out, and it's only really now that I've just gotten around to actually trying these colours out. So as I start off these paintings I'm going thin, so there is quite a lot of water mixed in with these colours. I found that it dries quite quickly and it's really easy to layer thicker colour over the top. Quite different to your normal watercolours, where with watercolours you need to generally start off light and then work your darks in, but it doesn't really matter with gouache so much because of the opacity of it. You can layer on thicker colour after it's dry, including white as well, so that's really cool. Now I'll be honest, I haven't done a whole load of background research into using gouache. I've just gotten straight into it, but I've found that it's actually really easy to use. In fact, I think anybody could just paint with it and learn how to use it without any kind of prior knowledge. So as I say, it's water-based, it's clean, it's easy to use, the cleanup is easy. So anyway, back to these hills here, and I've been mainly using a mix of ultramarine blue with yellow ochre, titanium white, and also some burnt sienna. So I'm creating these kind of organic looking greens. There's lots of different vegetation growing on the hill here. There's a mixture of trees and bush that are relatively dark in value, especially as trees are some of the darkest values to be found in the landscape. I've also started painting some of the grass as well, and this was ultramarine blue with some yellow ochre, titanium white, and also some lemon yellow as well. Now next I'm painting these willow trees. It's winter, so they still don't have any leaves on them yet, and this was a mix of ultramarine blue with burnt sienna, titanium white, and a little crimson. I'm also thinking about colour harmony as I paint this artwork, so trying to use common colours throughout the painting. For the grass I've used a mix of ultramarine blue, yellow ochre, titanium white, and lemon yellow. I've also mixed in a little bit of viridian and some crimson as well. I keep in mind that the value of the grass is quite light. It's one of the lighter values to be found in the landscape, and I've edged the mixture more on that kind of emerald green side. Now I'm painting the river, and that's mainly reflecting the sky, so I'm using a mix of ultramarine blue with a little viridian and titanium white. I'm using thick gestural brush marks here. And as this is only a small painting, I'm not worried about detail. It's really the colours and values that I want to get down, and I want the expressive gestural brush mark look of this painting. I found that some of these gouache paintings, they can almost look like plein air paintings that have been done in oil, and I think you can actually get some really fantastic results with them. So as I say, this is just such a low maintenance medium to use. It's pretty awesome. I'm really enjoying using gouache colours so far. Now here I'm painting more of the trees and vegetation on the side of the mountain here. Again, this is a mix of ultramarine blue with yellow ochre, titanium white, and a little alizarin crimson. I want to achieve some of those more olive tones in there, and I'm just building up the detail on the side of this mountain. Now already as I'm painting these trees here, the paint's already dry, so I can layer some of that paint over the top. Now going back to the water here, there's some reflections from the mountain and the trees, so I'm just painting in some colours there, which is mostly a mix of yellow ochre, burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, and a little titanium white. My main colours are established, and really I've been treating this almost like an oil painting. Painting the darks first, then getting in my basic colours, then going back across the painting and restating those dark values. And what I'm doing here is I'm painting the trees and bushes on the side of the mountain, so those shadows there, you get some quite dark occlusion shadows, and this is ultramarine blue with a little yellow ochre and some titanium white. I'm also just adding some more shadows in the foreground here, again using the same colours that I've used in those bushes, but with no titanium white, so just ultramarine blue and a little yellow ochre. I'm also using a smaller brush here as well, just because I'm getting into a bit more detail, although as I said I'm not going overly detailed with this painting. I just want to capture the atmosphere of the place that I'm painting. So as I said, I'm getting into some more detail now, and I'm adding more marks and layers to these willow trees. As I said, it's winter time, so they don't have any leaves on them, but we just want to communicate the form of these trees. I'm using the same colours that I used before, but I've just made the value lighter for the upper canopies of these trees, and then adding some darker layers further down. And if you remember, this was mostly a mix of ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, titanium white, and some crimson. These are a great go-to colour combination for painting things such as shadows, cloud shadows, mountain shadows, rocks, and trees as well. In this case I've just added more burnt sienna into my mix. I'm also painting the suggestion of main stems and branches as well. So many of those initial layers that I've got down are now dry already, so I can add more detail and thicker colour. So this is another thing that I've noticed now with my gouache paints, is that I can just layer down thick colour if I need to. And in fact, the tubes that I've used, the colour almost comes out like fresh acrylic paint in a way, so you can actually just layer that thick colour without mixing any water to it at all. But I've still mixed in some water anyway just to thin it out. This painting's really coming together. In fact, I'm really enjoying using these gouache paints. I could really see myself painting somewhere where I've just rocked up in my car, but it's too much hassle to get all the oil paints out and deal with all of that. I just want to do a quick sketch, for example, just sit in my car and just paint what's outside. I could see myself doing that because, as I say, with gouache, it's really easy to use and the cleanup is easy as well. Obviously, I love painting with oils, they're my favourite, but sometimes the cleanup can be a nightmare. You know, plus they smell and all that stuff. I guess what I'm trying to say is I could really see gouache paints being a useful medium to use, especially in the design process of my paintings. Plus these little paintings are pretty cute, I reckon. Anyway, I'm getting towards finishing up this painting, just adding some more layers to the river. As I say, the previous layers have dried already and I'm adding thicker layers. In general, starting off with thin layers of paint to start with and then building up the thicker layers, and as I say, they do seem to dry pretty quickly. So now I'm at the point where I'm just adding these last details to the mountains in the background here, just painting some exposed rock faces. This mountain's in shadow anyway. I've actually been wanting to paint this view for a while, and it's a bit tricky because the river snakes off to the left, but that mountain in the background is actually really prominent across Glenorchy, where the mountain's located. It's really a well-known mountain. Anyway, I'm finishing up this painting by just adding some final details, some shadows. More shadows in the water, so the shadows of these willow trees that are reflecting in it. And just tidying up the river overall. But from then on, this painting was pretty much finished. Now, as I say, I'm really happy with the look of this painting. It really does look like a plein air painting that I've done in oils, especially with that loose painterly brush marks. So let's see what this thing looks like when I peel off the masking tape, which is always my favourite parts of these types of paintings. Okay, so there it is. What do you think? I could definitely use this painting as reference material as a colour study for a larger painting. In fact, I think what I'll do is actually use this painting as reference and do a slightly larger study of this in oil paints and see what it looks like, and then perhaps maybe do a final full-size painting of this, but we'll see how we go. But I can definitely use this as part of my design process. So let's take a look at the next painting. This is the reference photo that I used for this next painting. Again, we're in Glenorchy in southern New Zealand. It's just such an inspiring place. It's characterised by high mountains and is an awesome place for painting outdoors. So this is a mountain landscape. I really wanted to capture the mood and atmosphere of these mountains. The mountains in the background here are in shadow, and they're going to be juxtaposed against the mid-ground area, which is illuminated in the full sunlight. So again, just like the first painting, painting in the dark values first, and that's in the background mountain here, using a mix of ultramarine blue with burnt sienna, titanium white and a little crimson, and I've edged the mix more on the blue side as well. I'm using quite thin layers of paint, so there's a lot of water in this mix, but that will dry relatively quickly and then I'll be able to layer on thicker layers over the top. You can actually see where the light's reflecting off those watery marks there, so you can see that it's quite wet. This flat brush, however, is making some nice painterly marks for this mountain. The other thing is I've made sure to edge the mixture more on the blue side so that the colour looks clean. I've desaturated the blue with the burnt sienna, as burnt sienna is a dark orange and orange is opposite to blue on the colour wheel, so when they're combined they cancel each other out. Now I'm painting the clouds, and this is going to be quite a sort of gloomy cloudy sky in the distance, shrouding the tops of the mountains, and again I've used the same colours that I've used in the mountains but with much more titanium white in the mix. I've also made sure to keep the mix more on the blue side so that it just looks pleasing to the eye and so the painting reads well to the viewer. Again, I've used quite thin layers here. Now next I'm painting some of these trees and shrubs that are in the foreground, and if you remember I said earlier, trees are some of the darkest values to be found in the landscape. So the shadows here, also being in the foreground, are going to be where the darkest values are in the painting, and I've used a mix of ultramarine blue with some yellow ochre. Now at this point in the painting, I'd already established my main dark values, so I was starting from the furthest zone away in the painting, which was the sky, and I was also adding some more layers to it, so adding more details to the sky, just readjusting the values in these mountains. I made that very background mountain a bit darker in value and added some more darker values to the other mountains as well. Also building up some texture in the mountain so to communicate some distant forests that are growing along there, perhaps some fields as well, just adding some random marks. Sweeping and gestural so the mountains look alive. I keep in mind that the mountains are in shadow, so I don't have that much leeway with the values. But those dark shadows are really going to help to emphasize the areas in the midground and the foreground that are in light, especially the midground, which is going to be illuminated in the full sun. So now I'm just painting the distant fields, and this is also in shadow, and I've used a mix of yellow ochre with burnt sienna, ultramarine blue and titanium white. Now for the grass in the midground here, I've used yellow ochre, lemon yellow, ultramarine blue, also titanium white and a little alizarin crimson. There's even a little bit of viridian in there. And now I'm painting this straw coloured grass in the foreground, which is yellow ochre, burnt sienna, titanium white and a little bit of ultramarine blue. The ultramarine blue is just going to take some of the saturation out of it. Now I'm going back to the sky and just adding more detail to it. I really want to communicate kind of heavy looking clouds that are shrouding the tops of the mountains here. And as these mountains are now dry, I can add more detail to them and add thicker layers of paint. I paint the water here, and this is a mix of ultramarine blue with some yellow ochre and titanium white. I keep in mind that the value is much lighter as well, and it's also in shadow. But this is also going to help to define the base of the mountain. Here I'm starting to paint in the trees and other vegetation that's in the midground, and I'm using a darker green, so I'm actually using the same colours that I used for the grass, but just with much more ultramarine blue and lemon yellow. If the green looks a bit too neon or artificial, I can knock it back with either some vermilion, which is like a light cadmium red. It was one of the colours that came in the pack of gouache paints that I've got. But anyway, red opposite to green on the colour wheel, so it helps to keep it in check and desaturate the green. I'm now working on the trees and vegetation in the foreground, just painting in some more of those shadows and just making them look random within the landscape. There's also the shadows in those midground trees as well to paint. And then I started adding more foliage to the trees, painting the areas of the tree canopies that are in the light. Now even in the foreground it wasn't in the full sunlight, it was a little bit cloudy as well. It was mainly the midground that's in light. I'm adding more grass here, layering on some thicker paint compared with the previous thinner layer, and this is going to add texture to the grass. Again, I'm using the same colours that I used before, and it's just really a varying combination of burnt sienna, yellow ochre, titanium white and ultramarine blue. Now, as I was painting this, I felt this was a little bit more of a tricky painting, but it might be due to my inexperience at using gouache, but I felt like it needed a little bit more colour in the foreground and midground. So what I did was I went back over the grass here in the midground, making sure that it is lighter in value and a nice rich green that's in the full sun. And then I also added some nice rich organic greens to the trees in the midground as well, just to make the painting look more engaging and with nice colours. This painting is really all about atmosphere, and it's not a complicated composition at all. In fact, in many cases, the more simple the composition, the more engaging and effective your painting can look. Sometimes paintings can be too overcomplicated with details, and it can risk spoiling the composition. Now at this point the painting was nearing the end and I was just adding some more texture within this background mountain. I did have a little bit of an issue with getting the values and the colours correct, but it was such an easy fix because all I needed to do was just wait for the gouache to dry, which took about 5 minutes, and then I was able to paint over it. Now lastly, I started adding more texture and detail to the clouds using much thicker paint now, much less water in it, again using the same colour but just communicating a few heavy, murky looking clouds that's really adding atmosphere to the painting. It's got that kind of Mordor, Lord of the Rings look, which I think some of it was filmed around here. I know that movie Willow that was made in the 80s I think was also filmed in this location. But anyway, it was here that I decided the painting was complete, so let's see what it looks like as I peel off the masking tape. Always my favourite part. Again, I was pretty happy with this painting. It looks like a plein air oil painting. I mean, it really does. What do you think? Have you ever used gouache paints before? Let me know in the comments section below. Anyway, I can definitely use this as a study for a larger painting. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to my channel. Now if you'd like to learn more about painting landscapes, then check out the free painting resources I have on my website at samuelerp.com. I've got a painting blog there full of free written painting tutorials. I also have full-length painting tutorial videos for sale on there as well. Now if you subscribe to my Patreon channel, I'm uploading a full-length painting tutorial video every month where I show you how to paint an artwork from start to finish. Plus you've got the whole back catalogue of all the other painting videos I've uploaded there as well, so it's like a landscape painting course really. You also get extended time-lapse painting videos, printable lesson notes, reference photos and bonus content, all for just $5 a month, and I've put the link in the description box below. Now if you subscribe to my email list, I'm giving away a free ebook on Introduction to Oil Painting, and again I've put the link in the description box below. So thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comment section if you'd like me to make some more videos about painting landscapes using gouache. As I say, I am new to this medium, but I'm definitely liking it, so I'm going to be doing some more paintings, but let me know if that's something else you'd like to see, as well as the normal oil painting tutorials I upload. As I say, thanks for watching, have a beautiful day, and I'll see you in the next video.